Okay, thank you, everyone. So I gave an intro about myself. I'm Ananya, and I'm here to give a talk on how you can learn Python by contributing to open source. So a quick intro about me. I'm currently pursuing my master's in computer science from Delhi Technological University in India, and I have interests in web development, DevOps, and of course, I love open source. You can connect with me on Twitter and GitHub. These are my social handles. The first thing that I would like to ask you, do you feel that you know Python enough? Especially for beginners, do you feel that you know how real-world Python projects are made? You know, how they're maintained and everything? So if you love open source, then I feel you can learn Python better with open source, right? And the things that I would like to discuss, which I feel you can definitely learn better with open source, are these. So we'll go in detail about each one of them. The very first thing I feel that you can learn better with Python are some advanced Python concepts. So basically, when you're starting out in Python, you know some basic fundamentals, but you don't know how real projects are being made, you know, how actual things are going on, how the code is made more readable or maintainable, what all practices are being done. So maybe you're not aware of functional programming, but functional programming is very often used in big open source projects. So suppose you have this for loop going on in some code, but a functional approach will make your code much better, using map or lambda functions, something which is kind of kept in mind in big projects. There's, of course, asynchronous programming, coroutines, which definitely will help you, deal with IO-bound tasks, and which is pretty common, like in big open source projects like Fast API. They use this a lot, and I feel this is something that you will learn when you get your hands dirty with such projects. The next important thing is code readability and style. So, of course, big open source projects, they want to keep their code as readable and maintainable. You need to follow some strict code style guidelines, and I feel that learning about these Python formatting tools like Black and Flake8, and Python is a dynamically typed language. It's not static. So you might come across something like MyPy, which is a static type checking tool, which can help make your code more understandable. So you can see this code over here. It's completely unindented, but by Black, you can just format your code and it will look much better. Now, obviously, it will help the new contributors as well to understand your code. It makes it easier because later on, doing huge modifications to a big code base is kind of difficult if the code is not well structured. Similarly, Flake8 does the same thing, but it will just give you some information that what's wrong with your code. It will not automatically correct everything. MyPy is also something which is used a lot in open source projects. So suppose you have this code, you have no type hints, and if you run MyPy, it gives you an error that the operand types are completely wrong. You're doing something wrong with your code. But if you have these type hints in place, you run MyPy, and it says that everything is perfect. You can go ahead. So it just makes your code a much cleaner, I guess. Of course, there's something called pre-commit as well, so you can have this configuration file where you can run all these tests beforehand before committing anything to your code. So you will, of course, learn about that as well. Next important thing is definitely testing. So open source projects they really prioritize testing a lot and test-driven development. So if you're not familiar with Python testing frameworks like PyTest or unit test, then definitely it's a great way to learn by contributing to open source. So suppose a PyTest, a simple test file will look something like this. You can import your modules, you can have some assertion statements over there, and you can test if your code is working fine or not. So just simply run PyTest, and it tells you that everything is fine, everything is working perfectly. So this is the official Kubernetes Python client, which kind of runs these PyTests. Every time you're merging the code, it will check whether everything is fine or not, and these are the results. So definitely, it's something important to learn, something which is used a lot in big projects, right? Another great thing, if you're interested in contributing to libraries, big Python packages, suppose I contributed to a project which was a routing project. So in that, they definitely will help you learn about, Python packaging tools, dependencies. If you are familiar with Conda, then you might be also familiar with Poetry, which is also pretty famous as a dependency management tool. when you're packaging your Python library, then you have something like setup.py, which is a Python script. You can see here, like for the Kubernetes Python client, you have this setup.py file, which describes everything. It's like package.json in Node.js, if you're familiar with that. And yeah, it just gives the whole thing, about your Python library. Of course, another important thing, in open source projects, any big project, concurrency is very important. There are some tasks which might kind of need, time efficiency, better utilization of your resources. So you might come across threading or concurrency, concurrent.futures module, which is kind of used a lot. So you have the simple threading module, you have your worker threads, and you are running all these tasks at the same time, which definitely speeds up your work. Something which is also used a lot in large code bases, right? I feel with open source, you can definitely learn Python in a better manner. You have, the opportunity to get into some better practices with Python. So you are able to learn how to write your clean and efficient Python code. So like, suppose you are contributing to some project, and you're like, I've made these changes, and the reviewer, the maintainer will look at the project, and like, they will tell you that, you know what, this is not good. You might use something like this, right? These are some nitpicks that you might have to keep in mind, because the code has to be as concise as possible. So all these things are possible only if you're collaborating with the maintainers. You definitely learn Python a lot better in this way. So yeah, it's not just about learning Python, but in general, if you're contributing to open source, you are learning so many things. You're learning how to collaborate with people. You are getting better at Git if you're a beginner in that. Able to communicate with your maintainers, reviewers. So suppose I had this big issue right here, and I completely laid out all the changes that, I want this thing to happen. Maybe we can do something like this. You know what? We should try something like this as well. And then, the reviewer tells me that, okay, that's a very good point. Maybe we can add a dependency over there, or maybe you can do something like this. They give you the suggestions. So the more you communicate with them, the more better you get at your code. What are the things that you might improve on, which you were not doing earlier? And yeah. Another important thing, yeah, CI/CD as well. So if you're contributing to open source projects, they use CI/CD a lot. So if you're not familiar with CI/CD, it's like part of DevOps. So you have continuous integration and deployment. As soon as you're making changes to your code, some tests are run. Some build is done, some formatting is done, and everything is tested properly before your code can be deployed to production. So these are things which are kind of like, important to know, because in real big projects, CI/CD is very crucial. It's being used a lot, right? So you get to know about Travis CI, Circle CI. GitHub Actions is pretty common. It's used a lot. So you'll get familiar with that as well. So like, this is one such project. We have this GitHub action. We have all these tests running up. We have a build job. It's running, all our tests, checking all the style and linting properties, and post actions, and everything is done properly. So you're sure that, okay, yeah, there were no breaking changes. Everything was fine. The code was perfect, and you can, just go ahead and deploy it to production, right? Yeah. Last important thing I feel is also, if you are interested in project management or being a team lead, then definitely being able to contribute to big open source projects will help you understand how to manage your projects, right? How to maintain tasks and milestones, publish releases of your projects, and definitely it's very highly valuable, right? So you have some project, you are maintaining the releases of your project one by one, and yeah, that's pretty much it, I feel. That is something that you will definitely learn if you're interested in open source. Yeah, so that was the end of my talk. If you have any questions, definitely I will take them up. And this is my Twitter handle. You can connect with me over there. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ananya, for the presentation. If anyone has any questions, please raise your hand.
Is anyone? Okay, just one.
So how do you feel it's been easy to like join an existing project? Do you feel your changes were immediately welcomed? And have you tried contributing to more than one project, or is it this one that you've done so far?
So it's been like over a year now that I started contributing to open source. So in the beginning, it's kind of nerve-wracking. It's very difficult to kind of, get into some large code base because there are so many people, they're looking at that code and they judge you a lot. They will just criticize you for anything that is not correct. But that's good. That's really great because you're learning something out of it. Of course, it's not easy. That's why I feel when you're trying to contribute to open source, start with something small. Please don't try some big change which will kind of intimidate you. I feel the maintainers will definitely help you out if you'll ask them silly questions. I have done a lot of mistakes. I was very embarrassed in the beginning. I thought I will never do open source again. But I got many opportunities with open source. I got to learn so many things in such a small amount of time with it. So I feel it's great. You should try it out. It will work. Yeah, thank you.
Anyone else?
Okay, I have a question. First of all, thank you for your presentation. It was very comprehensive and easy to understand. My question is there any Python project you can recommend for beginners?
There are many beginner Python projects. If you're interested in DevOps, like Kubernetes, I know it might look intimidating, but there are many issues which are also for beginners. There are good first issues. I won't say just go for documentation or typos, but there are some changes that you can still do. Maybe, you look at some code. Like I said, the functional programming thing. So you see some code, there's some for loop going on, and you can say, you know what, just replace it with map or lambda function. That makes it much better and easier to understand. So yeah, it's a small change, but it's a big thing for the code base, for the company. So yeah, it's pretty simple for beginners. It's not intimidating. Please go and try it out. I really love open source, and I hope you can love it too.
Yeah, I understand. Thank you for your answer.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Thank you, Ananya, for the talk. Please, everybody give a huge round of applause to the Ananya.
Thank you so much.